All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the April 1st, April Fool's Day Tinderbox Meetup. Typical format is we go around the room and we introduce people that are new. We then ask any projects that people are working on, and then we'll jump into a theme. We don't have a theme today, so we're just going to go around the table and see what projects that are working on. And then, as always, if we need to talk about something, I can pull something out of whatever I've been working on this week. One thing I do want to show, though, is Roger Alexander helped me find a really cool little application that someone wrote on GitHub. So we want to explore and share that. But we can talk about that when we have when the moment inspires us. So let's go around the room. I don't think I've met Kenneth Jefferson before. I think you're new, Kenneth. Is that not correct? Would you
Yes,
mind
I am. How's it
jumping
going,
on and
everyone?
introducing yourselves, and why are you here and how can we help?
My name is Kenny. I am an RPA engineer by day. Uh, what brought me to Tinderbox? Okay, so one of the things I want to do is use GPT-4 to auto-generate notes in Tinderbox through uh, Think or another storage based application.
Okay.
Now, I have not thought this out in depth. It's a lot of steps. Uh, so I'm just, kind of like in the first draft, I guess, before I even get started on it.
Got it. So, a great question, and actually, I can show you. We're not there at GPT-4, but we are at GPT-3, and I'll pull up my file real quick and just show you. So here I've got a. I actually legit. I was for the last few weeks. I've just been playing with it, but on Wednesday I had a presentation I delivered Thursday, and I actually used this a lot to achieve that. So if you go like this and you say prompts, why don't you give me a question
Um,
or a request?
when is GPT-5 coming being released?
Well, I don't know if it will be able to tell you that, but we'll ask.
Oh, 3.5 definitely won't be able to tell
I,
you
I
that.
already discovered that it doesn't predict the future.
Yes. But we can ask it, see what it has to say. So essentially, what happens is Roger Alexander and he did all the hard work, and I just kept like having the whip and saying, "Let's try this and let's try that." Built a Python script that integrates with ChatGPT, and I might have broken something, so there's no response there. Oh, that's interesting. I was messing with it earlier. Let me ask. Maybe it doesn't like the.
In the interest of clarity, there wasn't any hard work. I just went and stole somebody else's program, like all good professional programmers do.
Well, yeah, that's good hard work. So, what what is the mean? Okay, I've been messing with it lately, and so I might have just broken something. So I should have had an answer there, but we'll see what happens. But you'll see, like I was asking last night, like what is glyph, and then I was getting the responses. Let's see if this gave me a real one. Yeah, I must have broken something recently. I messed with my script, so I'll have to check what I broke. But basically, you can ask it questions, and it comes back with answers if you don't screw up your script. So I got to see what I broke last night. But yeah, so Roger, where are we at with it? You and I were talking about ChatGPT 4 from 3 to 4 on Thursday. Have you made any progress with that?
No, as they haven't opened the API up for general use, I've requested to be part of the beta, but haven't heard anything back yet.
Got it. So Kenneth, to your request, we can't dig into that today because there's like a bunch of setup stuff you need to do on your computer.
Yeah,
But I'll drop in my email, and if you want to talk with me offline, we
a
can.
ton of stuff to yeah.
And we can, and Roger, maybe if you're available, the three of us can hop on the line with Kevin, and we can work on documenting how do we actually package this thing for some other people.
Sure.
Okay. So I dropped my email in the chat, Kenneth, so you can let's follow up and work on that later.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming. Anything else you want to do it with? Like what? Now I know you want to ask, have had ChatGPT 4 do your homework for you, but like, what is your homework?
Well, not my homework. I want to create an environment where ChatGPT or GPT-4 is creating scenarios. So like when I'm studying for my certification exams, I'll have more scenarios to practice on, to think about, stuff like that.
Got it. Perfect.
Of course, the first step will be ingesting a PDF. So let's say if I had Cisco's official CCNA textbook, which is about, I think it's like 1,500 pages, if I'm not mistaken. It would ingest through either annotations through Devon Think, or maybe the entire PDF itself, because there are ways of doing that through GPT-4. And then just pulling out scenarios that way, and then putting those scenarios in the Tinderbox with tags and everything. But that's much later down the road.
All right. Yeah, that'll be a fun project to play with. It will take us a while, but as a community, we'll figure it out. I have no doubt. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and welcome to the family. Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? What else is going on? What's on people's minds? I don't see anybody else new. Mr. Phillip.
Yeah, hi. First of all, I just want to report on something. About a year ago, I asked for some input here about my daughter applying for American universities. And she's now got 3 or 4 offers to liberal arts colleges. And we're waiting for a couple more to come in the next coming days. And we're also waiting to hear from a university in the UK. So, yeah, I mean, it's about 12 months ago, and I was pretty unsure, not knowing much about the American uni system. She's ended up making all the decisions, but she's got, Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma, I think it is. Then Lewis Clark in Oregon, and across in Maine, College of the Atlantic. And we're waiting for a couple more in the US. And then, as I said, one in London.
Lewis and Clark is, I went to that school. Phenomenal school, by the way. Awesome.
Okay. Because she's tossing that between that one and the College of the Atlantic in Maine. That's her 2 top choices at the moment.
Yeah, Lewis and Clark is kind of like a mini Harvard, you might say. Very private, very cerebral school.
Very focused. These specialized schools tend to be very focused.
And Lewis Clark is in the salmon fishing capital of the country, if anybody cares.
Yeah, so that's sort of exciting for us. I mean, she's got a full scholarship offer to all these places and things, so that's good. Yeah. Anyhow, I just thought I'd report back on that. I mean, I know it's some time ago, but yeah, it's exciting news. But
well, the sad part is I remember that, and I can't believe it was a year ago. That's frightening. How fast.
Yeah, I know. She's and what she's done in the last year at this international school. So yeah, away from home. Yeah, it is. Anyhow, what I want to, my sort of question or comment related directly to Tinderbox was last week's online session was quite helpful about having information, highlighting, grabbing that, exporting that for Anki. I just wondered if there's anything that could be added to that process. And for my particular situation, what I have is in a single note, I've got 4 or 5 distinct paragraphs or lines of text, and I like to loop through each of them, and each line of text go to a different attribute. And I was sort of looking through a TBRef to find out the best way to do that. Yeah, so the idea of doing multiple sort of processing plus having highlighted parts of the text that I'm gathering the highlights as well, which is fairly simple, but it's really just rotating through 4 or 5 distinct paragraphs in a single note and extracting each line or each paragraph off to a separate attribute. Is that at all possible? And
absolutely. So if you recall 18 months, talk about time going quickly, 18 months, 24 months ago, if I could show you, if I could actually get into ATBRef, I could show you, maybe Mark could pull it up. You would want to use the stream operators.
Yeah.
So there's a whole series of stream operators that basically let you go line by line through your document. And sometimes it takes a little prep. Like you might want to, break up each line into an individual row, and you can do that using action code, and you'll park it off into another place. But if you recall back, do a search on our videos and our conversations. But recall we talked about parsing out to-dos out of notes, meeting notes. And so
Yep.
we had a whole bunch of, hey, I got a whole bunch of meeting notes that I took. And then we created a bunch of action code that went through all of the notes and parsed out those things we flagged as to-dos, and then created to-do notes. That's using the stream functionality.
Yep, I've read through the stream functionality. How do I, and I guess it's just going to be like a loop variable, isn't it? That there's just looping through each line. So if that's the correct way of describing it.
A stream by itself is kind of already a looping variable, but yeah, you'll want to step through it. So if you look back at some of those samples, we could try to pull one up real quick if I can try to find one. But Mark, do you have comments or reactions?
I've just put a link in the sidebar to an article that sort of ties all those bits together. I mean, how the stream parsing really came around was people were trying to break out of having to do lots of gnarly regex parsing just to find things that they knew were in a, so if it was something like the sort of raw string contents of an email file, which is actually quite formatted. So it's going to be a line that starts, 2: space a name. And that was the sort of starting premise of what these tools would do. Now, although you use them on a string, i.e. a bit of text, as it were, that bit of text, more often than not, is going to be the $text, the text of a note, which comprises many lines, and lines in that sense mean what you might think of as paragraphs, i.e. bits between a line break. And the idea is that you move the cursor through this block of text, taking the stuff as you want. That obviously works best if you're dealing with formatted text, because you know the order in which things come. So you expect the to marker to come before the from marker, for sake of argument. So in that sense, and then you can chain all these commands together, because you basically say, go to the next line, find this, find the bit after this marker, and capture that and put it in that attribute over there. Now skip to the next line and do that. So it's quite elegant. It won't work for everything, because in a sense, the more random your search requirement in that block of text, the more likely you may, for instance, need to do irregular expression. And there's nothing to stop you also just taking the text, splitting it again into lines / paragraphs, and then looping through that. I mean, essentially, the loop part of it is mainly that you are most of these tools are predicated on looking at one discrete bit of text, and if you've got lots of it, you don't want to be straying off into the wrong place. So there's an inherent need to loop through. We'll take this paragraph, we'll look at it. If it hasn't got what we want, we'll move to the next one. And so that there's nothing sort of hidden about that or odd about it. It's just a sort of necessary way of looking at the text that you want to work on in the right sort of scope. And someone who's background in programming can probably express that far more eloquently than I can.
My each note is nicely formatted, so it's very clear where one paragraph starts, one paragraph ends. I guess not having a lot of sort of experience or confidence in writing the code, what's a good tip for developing these looping variables? Is there a step-by-step process that I can sort of start off and build a looping variable sort of following a process? Or is it more just knowing what I need to do? And
my suggestion would therefore not start by trying to do your end task. If you're that far removed from being comfortable doing it, I'd make myself some very simple text, and do a very simple loop, because the process you're going through is getting to the point where, I know how to write a loop, so I'm not worrying that I've written the loop wrong. But if you try and do that when you're trying to do actually something else at the same time, it generally just means that you're sort of trying to learn two different lessons at once. So as with so many features, I think in Tinderbox, if it's something that's sort of slightly alien to you, it's just make a really, really small test, a note with say a text with 2 paragraphs in it, just enough so that you can play with it, break it to your heart's content, and also do the test without being drowning in information. So again, if you take some enormous screed of text and you test in that context, you've got more information than you need. I mean, to do a loop, you need more than one paragraph.
Yep.
It's that sort of thing. So just make it small, and then you'll find you then leverage out from there. Okay, right. So I now have an understanding of how to do this in a sort of syntax, in a style that I feel comfortable with. You know, people will use different variable names. I know I use a very standardized method in the ATB ref documentation simply so it's consistent across the piece. But as it try and say in all sorts of places, you don't have to use that. You don't have to sort of name things exactly the same way. The main thing with anything that is a variable is you give it a name and you refer to it by that name whenever you talk to it, which implies really two things. One is use variable names that stand out and won't get mistaken for something else. And probably if you're not from a coding background, don't start out using things like X and Y, because it makes it harder for you to remember as you go. Once you're more proficient, it sort of makes sense. But people who do that kind of thing are coding all day. So to them, it's about typing fewer characters. And I would say to you, if starting out and when it's new, it's much better that things are what they say on the tin. Even if you have functions with really long names and very long variables, the application doesn't mind. The doorway you're going through at the moment is saying, oh, right, I get to that moment of elucidation where I now understand what's happening. So if I type this in, I get that out. And once you do that, you will find all sorts of ways that you can, you know, make it more terse if you want. But again, by and large, for instance, if you start using things like functions, once you've written them, you're never really going to need the aim is you never really need to go back to them ever again, unless you want to sort of.
I am grateful. I am led by love and joy.
Sorry.
Does that help?
Yeah. Basically, I'm at this point where I've read up a fair bit. I've seen the stuff done here, and I've looked at the forum, where I think I have a good sort of understanding of all of this, the functions and the loop variables. It's just the handwork side, the actual using them, developing them, and implementing them is, I think, at the moment is a bit of a sort of a discrepancy there between my theoretical knowledge and my actual practical use of them.
Well, the classic, you're at the classic problem now of just committing. So the answer is, fail early, fail often, do lots of small tests, expect it not to work first time, then you'll be charmed if it does. But in reality, probably the first two rounds, and you'll make a different mistake each time. But eventually, if you, the thing is, don't start thinking you're going to do the whole task in one go and you're going to get it right first time. Yeah. And that doesn't matter, and that's not a failing on your part. It's just something you're going to have. You're learning
that's a method. Just the reality of software development. Even for professional programmers, it rarely works the first time.
Great. See, David's got a hand up.
Yep, thank you.
Philip, you're particularly in this age of ChatGPT noise, gross over promotion. There's a huge difference between text written for human consumption, where we are taught from the earliest age, don't use the same word in the same sentence or same paragraph. Go to the dictionary and find, or the thesaurus, find another term, because you want your writing to be interesting. This is poison for software. Absolutely categorically poisoned for software. And I am sworn to keep my mouth shut on naming standards until I actually have something to show, because Philip, assuming you're a non-programmer, which you seem to say, and Mark sets you up, say don't use I, J, and K or X, Y, and Z, because they mean nothing to you. The future you open this thing up in a week and you have no idea what you're talking about. The issue of meaningful names is completely unresolved in the world of software. And ChatGPT is completely unable to address it, because it's working from a large software model, and good names, meaningful names, not you, but the third author down, the third maintainer downstream can open it up and find, boy, the label says mushroom soup, and by golly, there's mushroom soup in the can. This is an unresolved issue. End of soapbox. Thank you.
All right, so I mean, we could play with a loop right now if you guys want to, if you're interested in that. Fidel actually had a good example of that last week that we played with, or we can try something else. Who wants to bring something else up before we were, chase down that rat hole? Any other comments, questions, stuff we're working on?
Michael, there's one other. It's just as a sort of banker is that if we shoot through that, we could loop back to the issue Fidel raised, because we've got there's already a
well, that was my point. Remember,
sorry. Okay, I'll shut up.
I just said Fidel brought it up this week, right? So and that's exactly what we did. I was going to demonstrate that. Anybody else have any? Do we want to try that? Okay, so let's. Since I'm not hearing yet no's and I'm assuming yeses, let's jump in and do that. So let's start basic, and then we'll bring in the more complex element of what Fidel was doing. And I don't want to necessarily call it complex, but let's see if we got this here. So Fidel, I want to kind of step in it. So Fidel gave us this really interesting exercise this week of, you've had a bunch of soccer players. The soccer players have age and position, etc. So let's start it from a blank file though, because that can be sometimes easier to do. And what we'll do is we'll create a prototype, and we'll go outline, and I'll just delete this one. We'll say P player, and that player has a prototype of age and position. Okay, so we've created a series of notes, and I'm going to go off to the side here now, create those, and age is a number, position's the string. And now we're going to copy from Fidel's file here into this Tinderbox. All right, so now we have a bunch of soccer players whose names are this, and we've got their ages and positions. And so Fidel's question was, how do we build a table, with these users, and how do we go about outputting those into a table? Now, what other how might you want to, let's just ask a question, like how might you want to loop through these, Philip? If you were to say you had these notes and you'd want to loop with them, let's experiment with some ideas.
You need two variables, do you? But I guess they're already there in terms of the attributes. But I guess you've got your attributes: name, age, position.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really quite sure how to.
So we could go. There's different things. So let's think about the kind of output we might want. We could build a table. We could build a bulleted list. We could have some other, other types of, output or interactions that we want from this. So Fidel's example was building a table. We could experiment quickly trying to build a bulleted list, and that bulleted list would be, grab the name and the age from each of the children notes and build me a list. That could be one way we could go about doing it. And maybe what we could do, and just so we don't, let's step through it in this way. So Fidel, I hope you don't mind us just using you as a guinea pig project here. But let's go ahead and do this. So let's say we wanted to build I'm trying to do it where I'm not just copying and pasting from the.
Okay. Michael, just so you know, we see a screen with prototypes and nothing happening. That may be intentional.
Well, no, it's just that happens to be the note that I'm selected. I'm trying to just talk myself through what we want to do.
Okay, right. Just want to make sure the screen.
I'm not moving my hand, so therefore the screen's not moving.
Okay.
So the question is, like, what do we want to do with this list? We've got names and notes and such, and so the question is, how do we want to go ahead and stream and iterate with this? Now, Philip, this is not going to do your end game, which was parse out and stream the text of a note in line by line, because we don't necessarily have time for that for this session. But we certainly can experiment with the the .each operators of building a loop, which is the fundamental element of what you would use to build go out and build stream. So why don't we do this? And we'll share with you an example of the challenge that that Fidel had earlier this week. So if we go ahead and add in an HTML template. And so here's the HTML template, and I'm just going to go randomly grab some text from here. And let's call, I'm going to paste it in like that. So I'm just grabbing some stuff that Fidel and I had worked on earlier the week. And we'll go like paste that in here, and then we'll talk this through real quick, and then we'll be able to explain the problem. So we'll call this one the player by name. Oops. And then let me walk you through this in just a second. Just change the name so we can check the innocent. Okay. So essentially what we have here is a table that says when I apply this table, oops, no, cancel. When I apply this table to this note here, what's going to happen? We're going to take the name of the table, so we're going to call it soccer team. We're going to add text if there's any text here, and so let's go ahead and add some text here so we can see it. So we're going to add some text in there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to start building a table. Oh, and I'm going to remove this because that was something I was doing earlier. So then we're going to start building a table. We're going to say, give me a table, create a row, put the name, the age, the position, give me a table. And then for each of the children of this particular note, process them. How are we going to, what do we want to do when we process them? Well, we're telling Tinderbox, go to T player name item and process it. So with each one of those individual children, what do we want you to do? We want you to open a row, stick in the name, stick in the age, stick in the position, close the row. And then when you're done, we want you to close the table. So that's what that's doing. And this is a very simple process. And we go like that, we get a table of our soccer team. Now, the challenge that Fidel pointed out, and one that I had struggled with a year or so ago, and then was able to kind of help him out with this week, was what if we wanted to reverse this? And this is a really, really important concept to be able to grok when you're using Tinderbox. So if you think about what we're asking Tinderbox to do is select this note, interrogate each of the children individually, and to build me the table. And so that's exactly what we've asked Tinderbox to do. Select, create first row, process the next one, give me Ethan, give me Caleb, and go down the list. Now, what would happen if we wanted to do this? And I'm going to show you the answer first, and then we'll show you how we do it. So this is the example we did with Fidel. Now, what would happen if you instead wanted this, right? So instead, you want the names across the top, and then you want each of the individual children. So that's what we're going to go build right now, and we're going to methodically walk through it and show you how we want to do that. And I'm going to do it in this new file here, because the reason why we can't. So we have to ask ourselves, well, if we're looking at this, comparing these two different files, what is it that we need to be able to do this? Well, unlike this document here, where how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there's 11 players. And so rather than having 11 rows, what we're asking Tinderbox to do is give me 3 rows with 11 columns. And so we're needing to think about, okay, so right now I've got 11 notes, and the information I need is in these 11 notes, but I now need to move that information and get it into other places. So how would we go about doing that? So let's go ahead and create another table. Well, this will be player by column. All right. And let's think about, before we start doing really anything, let's take a step, start with, well, what is a player by column? What does this type of model look like? And I'm going to pull this up just a minute. 3 schools. I do this constantly because I often, much like we need ATB ref to be reminding ourselves how things work, we can go down to WC3 Schools, which is a website that provides really, really great resources for HTML tagging and HTML work. And so what's the basic structure of a table? You're building a table in HTML, and you can use div tags too, but we're not and CSS and all that, but we're not going to get to that today. What a table does is you open up a table tag, you close a table tag. You open up a table row, you have either table heads or table data. You open up another table row. And so if we go and try that, you can see we've got our table in here. If we were to go and add another table here, I don't know, we'll call it test. Oops, sorry, my fingers are fat. And I'll run it without messing it up. When I do that, you'll notice here, this HTML gave me the table top, but it didn't give me the other cells because I didn't tell the browser that I wanted those other cells. Well, how do I tell it I want those other cells? Well, the way I do that is I go and put those other cells in. Okay, and I'll explain something in just a second before we're done. And let's go like that. And I'll just go a random number here. Let's just go like this. And so now that we've done this and I run it again, you'll see that those cells now fill in. And the difference between table head and table data is a CSS issue. And that table data, the TD refers to table data. So what this is saying in HTML land is open up a table cell for me. And then the backslash here is saying close that table cell. So we're saying open up a table, open up a row, give me some cells, close that row, open up another row, give me some cells, and all the way down, close the table, and then close the HTML. Now, the difference between table head and table data is a CSS construct, because that allows, with CSS, you can tell the browser treat my headers of the table differently than my cells, the table data. And we're not going to get into CSS today, and so that's we'll deal with that later. So what you're really asking, if we go back to our demo here, what we're asking Tinderbox to do is create me a table that is 12 columns long and 2 rows. Unlike what we did earlier, which was create me a table that is 3 columns, 3 columns long and 12 rows. Does that make sense? Let me pause right there just to make sure if get thumbs up, all of that, I don't want to lose anybody as we're going through this because it's really important. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, perfect.
Nice and clear. Yep.
All right, so now let's go here. So now let's ask ourselves, how do we do that? Right, that's the big question. So and let's kind of methodically go around this process. So let's start coding this up. First, I need to do is create action code. Action code to pull my pull attribute values and build table, right? So essentially the way we're going to, unlike the previous model where we had to, we just let Tinderbox do a lot of the work, in the standard flow, what we're now needing to do is we're going to build the table on the fly using action code. So the first thing we're going to ask Tinderbox to do is create action code to build the table. The next thing we're going to ask Tinderbox to do is insert the table into the visible browser. Okay, so those are the two things that we're going to be asking Tinderbox to do in this exercise. And because we know our end state, we can go ahead and put our values here. And so let's say we had a variable called vtable, which we'll be creating in just a minute. And I want to include vtable in my code. Oh, sorry. And before I do that, so if you were, and this is going to be a test for those that are no export code, who can tell me what the export code is to put a value into the output of a Tinderbox template? Anybody remember? No? Okay, well, if you don't remember, it's going to be value vtable, right? So at some point near the end of this process, what we're going to do is we're going to be saying, hey, Tinderbox, I want you to insert into this output the value of a variable we're going to call vtable. So now what we need to ask ourselves is, what do we want to stick into vtable? So let's go start building that out right now. So we'll go up here, and we know right out of the bat, we're going to need a string variable called vtable, right? Because we're going to be populating this string variable called vtable with all of the HTML that's going to be having our table. The next thing we're going to need to know is we're going to want to have a variable called a list, because we're going to need to be iterating against this list. And let's just call that vList for now. And we're going to have to ask ourselves, well, what do we want in that list? Well, what we want in that list is all of the values of this note. And there's a handfuls of ways that we can go about doing that. And let's experiment with some of this a little bit first. So we could go here, and I could say vList, go collect the children of the note, and we'll call it, we'll just get the name first, and let's play with this a little bit, and let's go down here and we'll say vtable equals vList. So and as Mark Anderson was talking about earlier, when you're first kind of getting used to this stuff, don't try to get it done all at once. Incrementally give yourself some examples just to be able to test and know that the core elements of what you're doing is working. So in this case, what I'm saying is, hey, Tinderbox, create a variable called table. Then what I want you to do is go create a variable called a list. I want you to populate that list with the name of the notes. And just to make sure that those two elements are working, let's make the value of vtable equal to the value of vList, and then let's output that value into the preview. So if we go here, and I say, now we're going to apply that template rather than the other one. What let me pause there. What do you expect us to see on the screen?
An error message.
An error message? No, okay, that's a good guess. What else do you expect? Bruce, what do you expect us to see on the screen?
Are you serious?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, but no worries. But here's what I expect. I expect that the output of vList is going to be a semicolon delimited list of the names of the children.
Oh, that's what I was about to say.
Right. So when I do that,
my memory. Thank you.
That's what we get. No, we didn't. What did I do wrong here? Shit. I was all Bill was right. We got an error. What did I do wrong? Oh, I know why, because I'm in action code. All right. So, and remember when Roger Alexander said earlier before, I'm not a software programmer, but you get it wrong. What am I doing wrong here? So what I did wrong is I'm intermixing two concepts right now in Tinderbox land. And so let's go ahead and let's show you what I did here. So I'm getting a bunch of unexpected stuff. Well, that's because I forgot a really important point. I'm in a template, and so Tinderbox is expecting to get export code like behavior. But what I've done is I've intermixed export code and action code into the context of a template. How do you go around that? So in Tinderbox land, you actually have an export code called action. So if I do this and wrap all of this and here. So what this little wrapper is doing right there is that's telling the Tinderbox template everything in between this export code action and the end of this caret is going to be action code that I want you to execute first. Then I want you to go implement a template. Now the difference here, and this is really important because we're learning some coding language here too. And again, by no means, guys, I'm sounding like I know what I'm talking about, but I'm stumbling forward faster than you are. Is really what's happening here. In action code, you can use forward slashes to make comments. To make comments in internet, what is it? Is it that? I can't remember. I think it's 3. In browser land, if you want to make a comment, that's
in HTML. It's 2, at least 2.
At least 2, right? So in HTML, so in action code, if you want to make a comment, you prefix a line with 2 forward slashes, and that tells Tinderbox that that's a comment. If you're making a comment in HTML, browsers expect that. So now, if I've done that right, and I go here, we're going to get our common delimited list. So both Bill and Bruce were right. Bill, you're right. Absolutely, we were going to get an error. And Bruce, you were right, but you weren't confident enough to say we were going to have a semi-delimited list, but you both got it right. So now we know it works, right? We've got it. We've achieved a really big and important step in our process of building this table. So now let's go back and say, well, now that we know that works, what is it that we want to do now? Well, let's go. The first thing we want to do is we want to now say we want to start iterating against that list, against this table. And let's just kind of experiment with stuff a little bit. First, we're going to say we want to build the, we want to start our table. Or actually, let's do an example like we were talking about before. Let's first experiment with this and say, let's build a bulleted list. Right? So let's first start building a bulleted list. Well, what is the .each operator to do that? Well, what we want to do is we want to say we have our vlist, our variable called vlist, and we want to use the operator .each. Okay. .each. And when you're playing with operators, it's often really good to kind of do this first, right? Which is a saying before you get the open and closing tags of your operator written down first, so that way you don't forget to close your tag and do that. So this is the .each structure, and essentially what this operator is going to be telling you to do is for each item in this list, from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all the way on to 1,000, no matter how many there are, what I want you to do is iterate through each one, and whatever's in between the curly brackets, do that to the list. Do that to the item. That's what we're going to ask it to do. So for now, let's say, and let's just make it, and then as we talked about earlier, this is the variable that we're going to give to that list item within that process loop. So you can use X, like, but this could also be anything else you want. It could be like an item, right? And so just so it's, so an item in that list. So let's go use an item for the purposes of this exercise. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say for each item, and remember our variable is table. So we're going to say vtable equals, and I'm going to purposely make a mistake here just so we can see it. A table equals an item, and let's put like a little asterisk in front of it, plus an item space plus an item, and then we're going to close that out. So let's just step by that. So what we're going to say right now is for each item in the list, I want you to populate vtable with an asterisk plus that item. So what's happening is the list is going to pass that item. The thing we're expecting right now is the name of the note to that item. Now watch what's going to happen. Now, let's think I'm sitting here. I'm like, oh, I'm doing awesome. This is really great. I'm now going to have this asterisk built list of every item in the note. That's my expectation. And then I'm like, go here. And I'm like, well, let's go here. And vtable equals vtable maybe, yeah, okay, yeah. So, and I even broke myself here. So I'm expecting this asterisk bulleted item of the list, and I go like that, and I'm like, wait a minute, why don't I have an asterisk bullet item of my list? Well, if you go here, you'll realize I forgot, I left that in. So I set the bulleted list, and then down here, I reset table to the list. So let's go ahead and delete that. So now I do it. Now I'm going to expect a bulleted item of the list. Well, wait a minute. Why did I only get Eric? Well, I only got Eric because Tinderbox is doing exactly what and remember, Eric is the last item on the list. So that's the other thing to think about. Well, where is Eric coming from? Well, Eric's the last item on the list. Why am I getting that? Well, I'm getting that because Tinderbox is doing exactly what I asked it to do. Make vtable equal to each item of the list. But what I'm not doing is I didn't do a plus equal. Right? If I had a plus equal, when I'm saying make it equal for each time you iterate through the list, make it an item of the list, and then add whatever value was in the list before.
So Michael, are you just for my comprehension, are you saying that it went through the list properly, but it replaced the value each time?
That's exactly what I'm saying, because I didn't make it additive. Thank you for doing that. So it went through it perfectly, but it replaced that item each time. So now that I've added the plus, look what happens. Okay, now I've got my bulleted list with each item, but the issue now is I don't have a line break. So how do I get a line break? So if I go here, I say plus, give me a line break. Now we have a bulleted list. So that's kind of how you can iterate through it. And again, I was trying to be coy and play with it, but I legitimately made some like Roger Alexander, esque mistakes, as he was saying earlier. You have all the best intentions that you think you're a genius, and then you realize you forgot something. It just happens, especially when you're playing around with it that way. So now we can see we've got a dot each operator that's actually working and working really well. Now, in this process, let's go ahead and think here. Now, if we go back to what Fidel had told us we ultimately wanted, we want a table that's got names and position and age. We don't just want the name. So if we wanted to do that, we could go up here and we could say, hey, Tinderbox, give me this plus, and I'll just do one now because I don't like doing it this way, age. So what I want you to do is go collect the name, put in a delimiter, and grab me the age and make that into my list. And so when I do that, what am I going to see? I'm now going to get Ethan, the delimiter, and the age of each player. Okay, because I'm collecting all of that information. Philip, you seems like you had a little thing just pop in your brain. Yeah, I actually heard it, even though you're on mute. I actually heard it.
Yes, I did. Thanks.
All right. So now we've got, and you can do this stringing this out as you want. Now here's an interesting thing. Now what we're going to do, and I'm going to show you another operator. Again, I used to do it this way. I don't do it this way anymore, but there's value in doing this. So let's go ahead and do this. What I now want to do is I want to say for each item in this list, the first thing I want to do is I want to create another variable. And we're going to call this one, for lack of creativity right now, v_item2. And I'm going to see if I could not screw this up when we're doing it. So I've got another, and I want to make v_item2 equal to, so let's just create v_item first. And we're going to say v_item2 is going to be a new string, a new list, I mean. And so let's call this vlist2. And I'm going to make vlist2 equal to n item dot split at the so what I've now just done is I said, okay, I've now got this coming into my flow as we saw here. Now I've got this. So now what I want to do is I want to say, hey, Tinderbox, I want you to take n item. First, I want you to create me a new variable, a new list variable called vlist. And now I want you to populate that vlist, that new list that we've just created, with the item n item. And I want you to split that. And so for the sake of demonstration, oh, I already have it. So you see where I have it says, yeah, that's fine. Let me do this. Okay, so for the sake of that, what I want you to do is split. And sometimes this is where it's helpful. I'm going to create an item called log. Now, Mr. Anderson has built us a better utility for doing this, but I'm going to make a log utility on the fly, because what I want to know is what, in fact, am I populating into this vlist2? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Tinderbox, make the text of the note named log. So when I'm saying Tinderbox, make the for every time you loop through this, make the text of the note named log equal to vlist2. Right? Because I want to know what's going on. So now when I run that, I can now go down here and I can see that the text, that vlist2 is now Eric ;2022. what I've essentially just done is, and remember, because this is not, and if I wanted to, you know, that lesson that we just learned earlier with Bruce, if I want to put the plus in there and I do that, you'll now see in log, I've got a whole the whole list of those items. So let me take a step back though and show you what we did. So what we did there is we said, I want to create a new list, split at that, using the split operator at that hashtag. So now that I have that new list, I can go here and I could actually create another vlist2 dot each, and this time I'll use X just for fun. Oops. And this one, this time it's, hang on, let me undo that. Let me see what I do. All right, so we've got vlist2, we've now got it. And now I need to be able to iterate against vlist2. So I want vlist2 dot each X. And the browser doesn't care about spaces, so you can go ahead and give yourself as much room as you want when you're doing this. Come on, why are you doing that? Oh, got it. Ah. That. All right, and this time we're going to put X there. So now what we're saying is, and we're going to do this, and then here's yet another operator we're going to teach you, X.0 plus space colon plus X.1. All right, so what have we just done here? What we've just done here is we said, okay, for each item in this list, now create me a new list, create a split at these hashtags. Now, and we've got the log, so we don't need that log anymore because we know what it was. And now we want to say is go vlist.each.x, now create a bulleted list. And then this is yet another new operator into our language. What we're saying is for each item in the list, X. What I want you to do is for the first item in that list, and again, the way Tinderbox does it, the first item is 0, and then the next item is 1, the next item is 2. For the first item in the list, stick it here, and then for the second item in the list, stick it there. So now when we do that, we get Ethan, comma, space, that, and let me see what we did wrong. Should have been okay. I know why, because we're still building the list somewhere else. All right. But yeah, again, and this is not really the ultimate output that I wanted, but you see how we're now kind of slowly but surely build. Oh, I know why we're having it, because we did the plus equal there. So that kind of tells you how we go about doing that. So that's another way to experiment in doing the list. But the challenge though, and as we just seen, using this split function can get really confusing really quickly within Tinderbox. So what I'm going to do now, so I'm going to go over here and say test code. This is something that I'll often do a lot, is I'll park test code off to the side when I kind of worked, but it didn't really, and I don't want to delete it and make it go away. I'm going to go ahead and start over. And so now we've got our item list. And this time though, rather than pulling name and hashtags and age and having to do with all these split operators and keeping that all in my head, I'm going to use something different. I'm going to say, let me just grab the ID of those notes. And let's go back now and say for vtable is going to equal plus equal, because we already learned that lesson, plus equal n item plus line break. And if I'm not mistaken, the proper way of writing a BR tag is to give it its self-closing referencing tag. And then we'll put our asterisk back in like that. So now, what do we expect? what we expect is not to get the name, not to get the age, not to get all that other garbage that I just showed you earlier. What I'm expecting to get is the ID numbers of every one of these notes. So when we do that, and we have a variable failure. Okay. What's happening here? Why did that happen? Anybody know?
You've misspelled the
yes,
variables.
It's a true Michael Beckerism. So that's the key thing is when you see that, you know something's working. You're getting output, so you know it's working. You haven't totally screwed it up. But what that's telling you is Tinderbox doesn't know what the value, it doesn't understand that variable that you're passing it to it. And more often than not, that's a spelling error. So now we've got the ID number. Sorry, my boss wants out. Just a minute. Sorry, the dog had to go pee. Okay, so now we've got the ID numbers of every one of those child notes. So now we're going to start smoking. This is going to be really cool. So now I've been able to iterate on the ID numbers of every one of those notes, and that's really fun to do. But ID numbers, as Mr. Bernstein often talks to us about, is a challenge because I have no idea what 160398086 refers to. Right? It's not really human readable language there. So there's a way around that. Remember what Tinderbox uses a concept called inclusion, which essentially says I can go grab, if I have the right information, I have the right paths, I can go grab information from one place and move it to another. And so now if I go here and I say name, what am I asking Tinderbox to do? Anybody know? With that one simple change, what am I asking Tinderbox to do?
Aren't you now rolling through the list of names, extracting the data from name attribute?
That's exactly it. But more specifically, what I'm asking Tinderbox to do is for each item in the notes, go get I want you to get the name attribute. And let's say I delete this right here, right? If I delete this, I'm just going to get soccer team, right? And Tinderbox is doing exactly what I'm asking it to do. For each item of the note, get me the name. Well, in the context of the selected note, what is the name? The name is soccer team, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, no. I want you to get the name of the ID of this ID of that note. So this could be an ID number. This could be a path. So now what we do when we do that, I've just got their names. So this was like my aha like 18 months ago, which has completely changed my life. Now, when you go here, now we can start doing a lot more complex stuff because now I can say, well, what I want to do now, remember that whole gobbledygook mess that we had earlier. Now I can do this. Age. Right? And again, error. So if we go here, really what I want is to be grammatically correct, is I want that. All right? So now I've got the name and the ages. Pretty cool, huh? So, and we could keep going down that. Remember, Mark Anderson educated us at the very beginning of the call. I don't want a table. I don't want a bulleted list of names and ages. What I want is my table that Fidel mapped out for us. But we, to learn learn what we're doing, we want to iterate through the steps like this so you can get some confidence that when you screw it up, which you will, you can fix it and you can then identify where you've screwed it up. And then two, you know that your functions and your variables are working. Yeah, Fidel.
Sorry, could you just repeat what the aha moment was for you? Like what specifically was it again?
The aha moment was for me. And again, the other thing is, so this is what we call what's the word I'm looking for, Mr. Anderson? It's not delimiter, not so the aha moment for Tinderbox is like, let me give you another example. let's go here. And
effectively, it's a context variable.
Yeah, but what do we call it? It's got a name in Tinderbox. It's like parent, child. It's not delimiter.
Designator.
Designator. That's it. Thanks. Okay. So this is designator. So let's say I'm looking at Sebastian here, and I'm going to say make the text of Sebastian equal to the name of the parent. Right. So in Tinderbox has this concept called designators. And so what I'm saying is, hey, Sebastian, I want your text to be the name of your parent. Well, who's your parent? It's soccer team. So when I apply that, the name of the parent is soccer. So using designators, you're able to, and again, let's call it, let's do another note. We'll call it league. If I can spell league right. Right. And now if I do this, and I say, hey, Sebastian, make of your grandparent. Now it's league, right? Because what you're doing, Tinderbox understands the context of where it's currently selected. So this concept of designator is so critical for you to be thinking about what you're doing. So within this context of Sebastian, if I want the parent, I say parent. If I want the designator, I say designator. If I want ancestors, that's everybody that comes before me. And remember, Tinderbox thinks about everything in the view of outline. So grandparent and grandparent are up. Ancestors is everything that's up. And then if you want to go down, siblings, children, descendants, that goes down. Right. So think about it in that kind of hierarchical relationship. So for me, what my aha moment is when I realized that an ID number could essentially be equivalent to a designator. What I'm doing is I'm designating the ID number of a note to name. So that could equally also have been path. Okay. So essentially what I'm saying is, hey, Tinderbox, go, use the designator in this context, an ID number, and go find the name of the note whose ID is this. So that's what we're saying. And so when I first kind of went through this exercise, I was doing all these splits and these really complicated collects. And, and it was especially difficult when I had certain notes that had like 20 different attributes I wanted to be pulling in. And so I was having these really complex split table issues going on. And then it dawned on me one day that the ID could be the designator. And then that made my life just enormously simple. So rather than having to go name plus, hash plus, and me based on your interactions with me, plus this list of pluses hashtags was getting ridiculously long and my splits were getting ridiculously complicated. When I realized I could just do name and then pull everything off a designator of name, it just made life so much easier. So let me pause there. Does that make sense to everyone?
It's very helpful. I can see the steps. I understand them now. Yep, this is great. Thank you.
Okay, and where did my mouse go? Here you go. And this is the stupidest design on the planet. When your mouse dies on Apple, you have to plug it into the bottom, and then it basically now is unusable for you. Whoever designed that at Apple it's got to be unbelievable. So my mouse just died, so I've got to lean over here. So now we're getting name and address and all that. Now remember, so we've learned how to build a list now. And again, asterisk-based lists, that's more of a markdown list. If you really wanted to do this in, and this is actually an important next step in our process. So let's say I don't actually want to use asterisks. I actually want to use bullets. So how do we go about creating a bulleted list in Tinderbox? And so so we don't screw up this template. Let's go ahead and just call this a bulleted list so we can keep it.
I had wondered about this part. Can you embed the typical HTML there?
And thank you, Bruce. All right. So how do we go about creating a bullet list? Well, the first step is we need to create the open tags. So we're going to say create open tags. All right. So what's the first thing we need? And we're calling it vtable just because that's the variable we have. But we're going to call vtable. And how do you open? And you can go to W3C schools to make this work. But let me So how
Are
do
you
you
talking about using UL?
I am. Good job. Awesome. So
Wow.
you open up a table with UL. Now, just to be kind to yourself, you know you're going to need a close tag, so go ahead and put the close tag immediately. And you'll notice what I just did here. Open list. And then down here, we're going to say, just for the sake of commenting, for those that are looking down the future, create closed list. And we don't need the word close. Open list, close list. So what we're doing is we're telling ourselves, what are we doing with this code? We're opening the list and we're closing the list. And then what we just say, and then we're gonna process. Now we're gonna say process. So now we're going to, loop through and process each of our items. And remember, our plus thing is critically important here. But let's experiment with it for now. So let's go like this. I'll do this all the time. And I'll want age. So what's the first thing we need is we need B table.
LI?
Yep.
No. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely right. We need the lead tag. And then like in the opening and closing, whoops. Here, and sometimes Mark Anderson taught me this. It's just helpful to indent by 3 spaces so that you can eyeball it. Okay, I've got a dot each list. Here's the open for the dot each list. Here's the close. Everything in the middle is there. It just visually helps you with that. And we'll close that out. So now that we've done that, what we're telling Tinderbox to do is open up a bulleted list, start processing the items, and then close the bulleted list. Now, this is not going to work, and intentionally, and no one's caught me on the mistake yet, but we'll go ahead and do it. And so it kind of worked, but not really.
Hold on, Bruce. I expect you to be on top of this.
All right.
Thanks. Your expectations exceed my grasp.
Here's why didn't it work? One thing why I all of a sudden got text was because I changed the name of the template to bulleted list. The name that note used to be named, which was bulleted player by column. Well, Tinderbox couldn't find player by column, so it defaulted to the preview template because that's the one it knew. So if I now go back to the newly named template, we now get this, and it doesn't work. Okay, so now we have to ask ourselves, what did we do wrong? So first step we're going to do is we're going to look at the code and figure out what we did wrong. This is the other thing Mark Anderson beat into me, and now I've absolutely learned it. When you sit here in this blank page, you're going to be kicking yourself like, what did I do wrong? Well, you want to learn what Tinderbox is seeing. And right now I'm seeing nothing. Well, to learn what Tinderbox is really looking at is click on the export tag. So what Tinderbox is outputting is a closed UL tag. And that tells you everything. What did I do wrong? Anybody know?
Oh, you didn't concatenate. You didn't add it.
Didn't add the pluses. Right? So plus, because again, what I was saying, go do all this stuff and then make table the UL tag. I wasn't adding everything that was coming before it. So if I go in here and I do my pluses, and I don't need a plus there because it's the first one, but might as well. And this is still going to be wrong. So what's happening? I'm getting my Lee tags, right? Well, that's happening because I forgot my pluses here. So now if we do that, we've got our bulleted list. Right? So again, the pluses thing, you're going to run into that all the time. You constantly forget them and you'll realize it and you'll look at the export code and then you'll kick yourself and then you go fix it. So that's just something to be aware. And then now if you look here, or you're like, okay, well, that I can see it's all looks good. It's all in the export code, but it looks like crap because I can't actually read it. So what then you want to do is go in here just to be kind to yourself and add the regex for a line break and into these spaces. And what you can do is if you add a few spaces here, again, the browser doesn't care. And for some reason, I've got something when I do 3 like that. So now if you add in the line breaks, and I don't need a plus here. Like that, you get the exact same output, but when you look at the export code, it's actually giving you line breaks. So it helps you kind of read the code a little bit better. And I didn't need a line break in front of the opening Lee. So if I go and remove that one, you'll see now I've got an open close list, I've got a closed list, and then there are my there's my bulleted list, and I don't need the spaces in front of that one. And so now we've got a nicely formatted bulleted list in perfect HTML output. Okay, so now that we've done that, and then we've incrementally moved ourselves along to now know exactly what we need to do to be able to build a table. Okay, so now we're going to call it vTable. And now what we're going to do is, instead of calling it build a list, we're going to build a table. And we're going to build a table, and we're going to close the table, and we're going to process the items, and we're going to open the table. All right, well, how do we open a table? We open a table with table order equals 1. Okay, so that basically so what that's doing is say, hey, Tinderbox, start the vTable and open up with a table tag. And as we know, we need a closing table tag. So we'll just go do that immediately. Otherwise, we'll forget. And now what we also need to know is we now need to have our rows. And since we're doing a table, we now need to have our first row. Create first row. Okay. And then this is process child rows. All right. And the reason why we need our first row is if we go back to what Fidel wanted us to have. By the way, too, a great way to do this, too, is pull out a piece of paper and hand draw the table you want. So that way it's always kind of sitting next to you. We just happen to have Fidel's example here, which is super lucky for us. But if we didn't have that, just hand draw it. And so what we now need to do is we now need to have Tinderbox produce us this first row. So let's go ahead and do that. And in order to do that, we need to have an iterative list. And we already know what our v list is here. So we'll go vlist dot each. And let's give it a designator of, I don't know, we'll call it vrow item. And we're going to close our table like that. Okay, and we'll indent 1. And so what do we need for vrow item? Well, what we need is we need to have the names of the notes there, and each one of those is going to be in a table cell. So we want to say vTable, and I'm going to purposely break this just so you can see it. And we know this plus equals. And what do we need to have in a table cell? Well, we need a table data. And I've kind of learned lately, I used to munge this stuff all together. And I've learned that sometimes it's just easier to increment it in the individual rows. So I know I need to have the opening and closing of the table data. And I know I need to now also have, and it's, in this case, it's going to be the name of the player. And actually, and this is where your logic starts thinking, I'm making an item, but it's really VID. Because remember, what are we passing the list but an ID? So it's VID, and so I want the variable ID to be passed to the name note. And so now what I've got is I'm going to say, hey, Tinderbox, open up a table for me. Now start creating the first row. And what I want you to do is populate the names of all of the data. Now I purposely forgot something just to show you. And so now if we do that, okay, what else did I forget? I forgot the fact that I'm no longer working with my bulleted list table, but now my table. And there you go. Now what's interesting here is the browser, because Mr. Anderson has implemented WebKit. It's the fundamentals of a Safari browser. It's the open source for the Safari browser. And if you go in here, well, first we've got it munged up. So let's go and fix that. And so what we want is after every table, We want the line break. And we want it after here too. So that's going to look good. And I don't need, and we'll leave that for now. It's fine. Okay. And if we look at the HTML, now something's important missing here. Now the browser's smart enough to insert the to kind of pretend that it's seeing the table for us. But what we forgot was to insert the table rows. So let's go ahead and insert our table rows. And now we're going to do that before the .h operator, because what we want is one row equals table row plus our /, and I don't need the plus. So before we start our loop, we want to create a row, and after we start our loop, we want to end our row. We want a few line breaks in there. Okay, so now what we're saying is, hey, Tinderbox, I want you to create me a row of the names of the players, and I want you to indent that table. So I go up here and look at it. And so now I've got the bulleted list, which is still there. And now I've got a nicely formatted row. And there is table, table row, and I've got a border equals. So let's go see what I broke there. What I broke there was this. You see how I've got two quotes right there. If you want to have quotes embedded within that, you use single quotes to bound the list. So now if I go here, you'll see that I've got my table. Here's the table, here's the row, here's all of our items, here's that. And then this is the chaff from our bulleted list that we're going to fix right now. So now I've got my first row. And so then all I need to do now is remove my list item there and say, what do we now want for this row? What we want is, and this one is create the, this is actually going to be create position row. And we can grab this whole block of text right there, copy this. And you'll see something. I missed something earlier, and I'll show you what I missed in just a minute. So now we're going to create the position row. And before we iterate each table, let me just double check. What do we need for position row? Right. Yeah. What I now need to do is I create the row and I create the first item. And this one is going to be a table data. And then it's going to be a quote plus word position plus quote, close the table. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're going to say, let's go grab and create the position row. So we, this one, I don't need. I say, now what I want you to do is close that row. Now I'm asking you to open up a new row. I'm asking you to create a cell called position. What I now want you to do then is for each of the, each item in VList, iterate through it. And this time I want you to grab the position and then close that out. And this is not going to work for a specific reason. And so now I've got a head and I've got the positions, but you'll see it's slightly off. And the question is, why is it slightly off? Well, it's slightly off because we forgot up here when we created this first row that we needed to create room for the word position. And so what we need to do is put in a blank cell at the beginning of the table. So now we've got the blank cell. We've got each of our different players, and I'm not getting position entered in properly here. To fix that, we got to see and go look at our HTML and see what's happening. So I've got a table. I've got the blank cell there. I've got all of my players. I've got a row, and then I've got this open table here that's not saying position. So let's see what I did wrong with that quote 2, 3. Whenever I do 3 spaces, I get a dot, and I can't figure out why. What did I do wrong there?
So in that first row, that's actually the name. So where you've got that empty cell is actually the name of the person. So inside the empty, one line up from where you are, inside there's empty. So go up about 5 lines from where your cursor is. There you go. Put name in there, because that's what's going to be when you show.
That's not correct.
Yeah, when you look at the thing, you'll see now your empty cells become the name.
But that's not the name. I guess you could call it that way, but then
because that's what that row is, and then you've got to get. Then if you get rid of that extra empty cell that you put in before position for some reason.
No, where's that? Where are you saying empty cell? Position. This should be saying position. I don't know why it's not.
And it's getting another cell. It's getting another cell in front of it, isn't it? When you look at the HTML,
it's getting what this should say position.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and it's not saying position. But go back to the code where you said position.
What did I do wrong here? Table plus table, row, table data.
Right. Right. What you've done is take out those 2 plus signs there.
Where?
So sorry. You where you've got where the line that says position.
Oh,
just
yeah.
remove.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right, because I was creating a variable. Yeah, sorry. I was thinking variable. Yeah, okay, now we do this. Now we've got position. Okay, so now we've got position. Now we have to do the same thing to get age. So to get age, we can just copy this whole thing. Where's first row, create position. Hang on, I deleted the... there's close table, there's close the row. All right, so here's the position, and now we get the age. And the nice thing is, because you're using ID, this makes modification a lot easier. Now, we've got age. And there you go. We've now learned how to iterate loops. We've now learned how to build lists. We've now learned how to use .ats. For list finders. We've now learned how to kind of incrementally step this through and do all that. Now, in the last 7 minutes, I want to show you something else wickedly cool that's super fun with Tinderbox. So the other thing now I want to do is this. I now want to go and I want to do something else. I want to, what do I want to do? Let me go here. I want to add this to the text. And I'm just going to paste it because I don't want to waste your guys' time. I'm now going to come up here and I'm going to say, here's my table. And above text, I'm going to add this. Player average age is this value. So now we now need to calculate that new variable string. And so we'll say variable equals a number. And it's the it's the sum v average equals the sum of the children age. And let's do this in steps, just like we've been doing along. So the first thing I'm doing is make v average equal the sum of the children of the variable age. Let's go see what we get. You'll see the sum of the children of our players is 231. So now what we can do is we can say variable number v count equals v list dot count. So now what we're doing is we're asking, hey, Tinderbox, create your list, count how many items are in the list, add up the age of all the players, and now divide that by v count. Now, the average age of our players is 21. So now you can start seeing how you can start doing math in this stuff. And now that we've got this all set up and it's all built in variables, I can go ahead. My birthday was on Thursday. So I can say Michael Becker. Our Michael's the new player. He's got the player thing, and he is 54. And his position is water boy. And the water boy is now going to bring up the average age to 23.75. Kind of skewing it up. So that now you can see how you can start, teasing all of these different pieces together. So what do you guys think?
That's been very helpful. The result is amazing from just relatively simple steps. Now that you've taken us through all the steps, I can really start to utilize this myself. So thank you very much. It's great. And happy birthday for the other day.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Eddie.
Of course, since I'm the person that issued the request for the report, I now want to see that age justified right.
Ah, okay. So
this is exactly, I cannot tell you how many times this iterative process of you produce results.
And again, this is the glorious thing of Tinderbox. So in HTML land, you say align equals right. Okay, now I made another mistake. I'm saying, well, one, I freaking spelled it wrong. Right. The other one is I've got two quotes here. So I need to use open quotes, the single quotes in the beginning, so that Tinderbox doesn't get confused. Now we've aligned age to the right.
Yeah, it's worth noting there that although Tinderbox doesn't matter whether the outer quotes are single or double, the HTML code if you want the HTML code to validate properly, you can only use double quotes. Therefore, in the Tinderbox level, in the action code, you just use single quotes.
Yep. And Fidel, you're on mute.
So just a quick question. Let's say I wanted to, because I saw this happening in some tables, but now we're mixing action code and HTML and whatnot. If I wanted to click on the node name like Ethan or Caleb or Sebastian and make it link by I think it's href to the actual node in Tinderbox. How would I do that if there's action code and HTML involved?
Well, we only have 1 minute, but the quickest way to do that would be this. And again, since we know the node ID, let me see if I can brainstorm this really quickly. So I've got Ethan is the name right there, and so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say vtable plus equals. Let's see how much of my vaporware here I can do here. ahref equals, and again, because we're going to do quotes, this has to be single quote. ahref equals quote plus, and then we're going to end that. No, h quote plus, and then I want path. Which one? vid plus. Yeah. So I want. Just a minute. So I want to wrap the name Ethan around the opening tag of that name. So I'm going to get the path, and then I need to do plus quotes. And again, because it's HTML tag like that. So now I'm going to close the anchor tag, and then I'm going to add one more.
I see.
Right? And I go like that. And I'm going to say equals quote, close the A. So now we're essentially done. And that's why kind of doing each line by line is helpful. You can smudge them all into one row, but doing each, constructing the variable piece by piece can be super helpful because it helps debug when you've screwed it up. Yeah, Mr. Anderson.
Just a quick thing with the path.
I screwed that up.
Yeah, because you've got to think about there's the exported name versus the internal name. So if you're using very simple names, and assuming export, probably all you need to do there was where you've got after the path ID, after the next single after the next single quote and before the double quote on that same line, before the double quote.
Where?
Before the double quote.
Right there?
That's it. Just put period HTML.
Ah, yeah.
And you're wagering here that the default name and export path will work, but this is just a very simple thing.
Yeah, I got true. So I'm doing something wrong, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
Okay.
So what the HTML VID? Yeah, but let's just do. And this is where you'll experiment with it, and you just have to construct. I've done it before. I just can't remember. Right. So, yeah, we're getting something true. So we'll just have to figure out. So essentially, what you need to be doing is wrapping your we'll figure it out. But this is that iterative thing that we need to do. You just need to wrap that. You need to be wrapping that name with the HTML, which appropriate with the HTML tags. And I just we probably figure it out again in 2 seconds.
So one other question that Fidel had in the today in the forum on the same thing was asking, okay, well, we made an HTML table, but what if I want that as CSV? So in fact, I took that's Michael's example in the thread, and I've added a version of the table in both orientations as CSV and as tab delimited, just to show you how easy it is. Because the basic thing is, once you understand the mechanism, so where the information comes from and where it goes in the template, all you then need to do to export a different thing, or XML or JSON, or pick your acronym. Essentially, once you understand what the format requires, it's exactly the same pattern in terms of your template. So the simplest one is where you just walk down you start with your container, like here, soccer team, and you just say, right, give me, and then you said, and now just take all the children, which are the notes underneath, using a template that is in CSV form or in tab delim form or whatever format. The one that we've been doing, Murphy's Law, is the one we want is more complicated because you're having to turn the table round. One other thing you can think about is it may be that you could put the information into notes in a way that each of the children is the information you wanted in the export. So that's another way to do it. So in other words, instead of having to turn it around and use action code, if you think about the information that's in the notes and you put the information where you've got Ethan or Caleb, you might have something different. I'm trying to do it, I'm spacing a bit as to what it would be. But you could always think about it. You're thinking, oh, I want this table, I want this information. Now I'm going to have to turn it all around and construct an HTML table in the other orientation. You could say, well, wait a minute, why don't I change the way I've recorded the information in Tinderbox so that each note has the information I need for that row? It may just be, if you have the choice of doing that, and it doesn't mess up your understanding of the information that's in Tinderbox, that's another way to address the same problem. Because by and large, as I'm sure you can see, it's much easier to just say, right, give me all the child notes exported through this template, and it's just chunking it out in a row for you. And there's far less for you to think about in terms of how it's laid out. But I think this has been a good example of the flexibility that's there. Tables, funnily enough, are one of the more complicated things to do in HTML, and the degree of customization is endless. But what Michael's shown you, I think, covers all the basics. And as I say, there is, in the thread that was discussing this in the forum, there is an answer, so you can show. A thing to bear in mind, last point, a thing to bear in mind, if you're using things like tab delimited or CSV, don't look at the preview window, because it's not going to help you at all. The preview window is trying to basically show you style HTML. And that's not going to tell you if your CSV format is as you expect it. Much better in that case to always go straight to the export view and you'll see it. The other thing to bear in mind is that, especially if you're using something like tab delimited, the lines may wrap in odd ways because it's not trying to show it to you like a spreadsheet. But you should at least be able to see if you've got weird breakage going on in your export. So I hope that helps.
So while he was speaking, if you're watching, there you go. And I didn't do a plus equals, so let's go ahead and fix the plus equals. So essentially, if you do, go collect me. This is why the grabbing ID is so important. Grab the ID, create my table, name, comma, position, comma, age. And then, and I should put in a line break there because it's going to want that. Age, and then line break. And then at the end, we'll want a line break for each one of these. Okay, and because I did plus, now if I could do the CSV, there's your CSV. And this is what it means. In the preview, it's garbage. It doesn't really help you. But in a CSV, there's your CSV. Now, here's a really important thing, and I'm glad and we can wrap up with this. So now I've got my CSV file, age and all of that, and I don't really, that will munge your CSV file. So let's get rid of that because we don't need that. Okay, so there's my CSV file. Now here's a super important trick for Tinderbox. I'm going to go ahead and say export as, select the note, get it out of preview. And I go to File, Export as selected notes. And we'll go down in Documents, Downloads. And I'll show you two other things and then we'll leave. Soccer team text. I think it's probably going to save it as an HTML file. Let's see what happens. Downloads.
No, wait, I mean, it's always exporting text. If you give it an HTML extension, that just means when Finder gets its clause on it, says, oh, right, this is an HTML page. If you put CSV at the end, most things can do that. With tabdelim, the norm is actually to use .txt. Some people use TSV, but
so there you go. Okay. Now, one last thing that's kind of fun. Now, we built a template for CSV, but you don't actually have to. Now let's go think about our broader strategy for our Tinderbox file. If I go over here and I say attribute browser, and for the sake of this, for the time being, I'm just going to say, make it easy, and go here and I say, hey, Tinderbox, go find me the, go collect the, descent. I'm mind blanking right now. What do I want my query to be? Find children. Actually, how do I do it? I'm mind blanking right now. How do I grab the children from soccer?
You want inside.
Oh, inside. That's right. Inside. Yeah.
Or you could say descended from, because it's the same.
I'm just in the wrong context. My brain just short circuited. So if I go find me inside or descended from the Note Soccer. So now I've got all the players in Note Soccer. So now I can come up here and I can say, I want age and I want position.
I am grateful. Everything I've asked for is flowing to me.
Sorry. I've got an affirmations thing every 90 minutes. Within every 90 minutes, it sends me a positive affirmation to remind me to be grateful for life. So it's a whole other Tinderbox file I've built. So you see here we've pulled this off, and then using Tinderbox too. By the way, I can summarize by age, and do it by a mean. So now I've got the 23.75 average of the age of the players. You can so attribute browser is just amazing if you really start using it. So now if I go to File, Export, and then you say export as attribute browser, and now it's going to give me this file called data, and I think I probably got another one, so we'll just call it data2.rtf. And here's the trick I want to show you. So I've now exported this file out to my downloads folder as a RTF file. So when I open that up in text, it gives me this pretty kind of mungy RTF file. If you go to File in your text editor, let me see if I go this up real quick. In your text editor, if you go Format, Make Plain Text, what that does is it asks you, do you want to turn this RTF file into plain text? And I say, yes, I do. Thank you very much. And so now I get my plain text, and now I can go ahead and open that up in Excel. And go like this. Where's my Excel? Okay. And if I go over to Excel, there you go. So it's a lot easier to do that via attribute browser than it is messing around with a template. All right. What did everybody think? Good day today? Awesome. We covered a ton.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. That was awesome.
My pleasure. All right. Anything else to add, or are we good for the week? Okay.
we're never good for the week. There'll be more questions coming on the forum.
Yeah, all good. Well, that was super fun. Thanks everybody. Really appreciate it. And we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.